All right, at this time, we're going to call this meeting to order. At this time, please silence any electronic devices that you may have. I will ask you all to please stand, and Commissioner Penny, Vice Mayor Penny, is going to lead us in invocation
Call the roll first.
afterwards.
Will you pray with me? Dear gracious God, we thank you for another beautiful day. We thank you for the ability to meet freely and discuss the business of the city of Holly Hill. We were reminded yesterday that our time on this earth is limited. One of our teammates, Walt Smizer, died suddenly. Please comfort his family, all of his friends, his co-workers that mourn his passing. Please protect all that protect and serve our nation, our state, our county, and our city. Amen.
Amen.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to read a prayer that's often read at Jewish funerals in honor of Walt. The poem is entitled, When All That's Left Is Love, by Rabbi Mahler. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking on the street beside you. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You can love me most by sharing your shimkas and multiply your mitzvot. You can love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not in your mind. Amen.
Amen. That was very nice. Please continue standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then Val, will you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Pia?
Here. Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Penny. As he alluded to, we lost a very valued member of our employee base here, of our team, as we like to call it, and he would be sorely missed. So that was very appropriate. I appreciate that,
Thank you.
Vice Mayor. And at this time, we're going to move to presentations, the 2020 Holly Hill Arts Festival presentation. So if you guys would like to come up and go ahead and take the floor, and just go ahead and put your names into the record so it's in there. All right.
I'm Pat Masadi Abernathy.
I'm Pam Fieldes of Ormond.
We'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present for the second annual Holly Hill Arts Festival. As you know, our original goal was to help the kids in Holly Hill, and we achieved that. And we plan to do that again and pledge some of our fundraising money to help the kids in the arts and the music departments. We're very proud of that we actually can make a difference. Last year's event was really successful. It's broken. I want to talk to him about how successful it was.
That it's broken. Yeah. So I just got word that actually our projector here is broken. So we're going to just use these on the side. So people in the audience, we have these over on the side for your viewing pleasure. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Well, one of the biggest challenges you have when you put on an art festival, of course, is the very first one. And to have stellar artists support you and the community support you was just overwhelming. We had a tremendous show last year. We did a post-show survey as well to get the feedback from the artists. It was very high. We were over 90% in all categories. We had some wonderful recommendations, one of which was, can you put us near the water? We'd like to have some breeze. And so when we met with Mr. Forte and he suggested Sunrise Park, and I'm like, Sunrise Park? I've never been there. What a gem. What a beautiful, beautiful piece of land. And just perfect for an art festival. So do you want me to continue? Okay. If you take a look at this particular slide, this is our projection for the layout of this show. And I have to say, when you walk Sunrise Park, you have so many different options for a layout. So we actually pulled in one of our winning artists that was in the show last year as well. He's very well known, and he's in galleries throughout Florida and the country, as well as another artist who is from the South Florida area, and to give us some guidance. And one thing that they all agreed on, when you stand and walk into the park, your eye is going to go right down all the rows of the artists, right straight to the water. It's just going to be a beautiful, very sexy spot. We already are, I would say, 85% full at this point. We are at a point right now where we're 60% fine art, 40% craft. I'd like to have more fine artists, and we still have 2 more weeks to go, and we have several that have already committed to us verbally, so we're very excited about
Wow.
that.
That's major, already 85%.
It is major. I mean, we've gotten some really great, and a lot of them are from Halifax Art Festival, and a lot of them are from Images. And the interesting thing, when we went to Images and we worked at asking people to attend the Holly Hill Arts Festival, I never got what I got last year. And last year was like, where's Holly Hill? No one said that. Everybody said, oh my God, I heard about it. Oh yeah, we would love to be in it. We got such positive response. And I don't mean to belabor the point of Sunrise Park, but it is really trafficked. We've been out there laying it out at least three times. I don't know how many times we've been out there laying out different layouts. And there's always people there. They're always like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to go to the art festival. I can hardly wait. It's a great venue. Now, last year was a test year where we really had the initial, can we draw the people from Port Orange and Ormond and Daytona? We did. We drew them. Saturday was a little consistent, but not heavy. What was really strange was Sunday was killer. These people went home and said, this is a great art festival. And Sunday was our best day. And traditionally, for all art festivals we've ever been in, Sunday is not a good day. So the word has spread. This year is another test year because we've changed locations. We want to make sure that it's going to work. And what we're asking you to do is to help us this year and the next 2 years. So the next year, we should be self-sustaining, is what I'm trying to say. And that is our ask for today.
Okay. And Joe, did you already speak to them about the ask?
Never met these women.
Oh, okay. I thought so. Plausible deniability.
Yeah.
So could you talk to us about the specific ask?
What they're looking for is, yeah, obviously, there's no rental fee for the use of the park. We haven't assigned any police officers specifically to work the detail, but we'll have some that will be there. We're going to be using some of the explorers and an officer for traffic on Riverside Drive. Do we have an overnight person? Okay, so we might need an officer overnight for security. We're thinking that we might even allow some people to be in there overnight that'll also do some of their own on-site security. We're going to provide some custodial work to make sure that the trash receptacles are emptied if they're filled up throughout the day. I don't have an estimated cost of what that would be. We supported the project last year on City Hall property. This year they want to try it over at Sunrise Park, which I think is going to be a much nicer venue, weather permitting. I think it'll be wonderful. And then the following year, you'll be self-sustaining, or the year after?
We were thinking that 2023, we would truly be self-sustaining. But
So-
again, we would ask every year, and,
So this year and next year, they're looking, like we did with the car show, they're looking for the city's support to get this thing kicked off. Now, keep in mind that they make a donation to the 2 schools, the Holly Hill K-8 school and the UBIC school. This year, we were fortunate to, our art show was bumped this in 2020. We had a date set, and then the Speedway had decided to get into the art business, and their date conflicted with our date. So we had to gracefully negotiate a change to our date, which we did, which is going to provide us some assistance in how we're going to support our 2 local schools. So that's actually turned out to be a good thing.
The next 2 years. this year and the next 2 years, I believe. Isn't that what you're saying?
I was saying I'd like you to help us until 2023.
You have 2021 and 22, so 3 years is what they're asking for. But each year they'll come back, and we'll know more specifically based on this new venue, what the city had to put into it, what the costs are, and we'll have a dollar figure specifically. But we don't have that dollar figure based on its new location and what it is that they're going to be looking for.
Okay.
Like everything, it's it's not in the CRA, so it's not CRA funded. It's general fund supported.
Okay. Do you have an estimate of what it cost us last year? I know it was a different location, but,
I don't think so.
all right. And so I think the proper way to do this is bring this back at our next meeting for, as an item.
I mean, if you want to put
like
something on that says not
$2,000.
to exceed $2,000, it's just
It
a
was
not
like
to
2,000
exceed.
last year, I think.
That's what I thought.
They've already got the
Probably.
flyer. This is happening. It's
Right.
already,
Right.
Yeah.
it's going to.
Right, and I don't think it's a question of support. Last year was such a huge success. I heard from people all over talking about Holly Hill, and so when you talk about what we as a commission want to do, promote Holly Hill and show off all of our beautiful things. And when we talk about one of the most beautiful places, that's Sunrise Park. I mean, that's our jewel. And to get people to come there, appreciate Holly Hill, I think it does a lot of good for Holly Hill. So that's money well spent for me, just in advertising alone in Goodwill, but then also what you're doing for the kids as well at the school. So I don't think it's a matter of support. I think it's a matter of just doing it the right way, getting our
Motion to not, allow the
Not to
city
exceed two.
staff to support the event at an amount not to exceed $2,000.
and just for this year, and then we'll take it year by
Each year we'll
year.
bring it back.
Correct.
But you should probably, let the ladies know that you'll do this for 3 years, and after that, you strongly encouraging them to be self-sufficient by that time.
Right.
It really depends on, since this is a test year, the only resistance I've received is from the consumers, the artful shoppers. Well, where am I going to park? And we've talked to Tony Casado. We believe we're going to get a van. We talked to our sponsor from Riviera Assisted Living. They're checking with corporate to see if we can get a van. And my response is, have you been to Mount Dora? When you go to the Mount Dora show, everybody parks in all the neighborhoods. So I feel like it's going to be the best one ever. I really do. I think it's going to be great.
Well, we appreciate your effort. I'll entertain a motion from the floor.
Motion to approve up to $2,000 this year and pledge support for the next 2 years.
And I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and now if you guys could take your seat. At this time, we'll open it up to public participation. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close public participation. Is there any discussion needed?
Just
Yes.
one thing I want to mention to Pat before she cuts out of here. There's a scoutmaster there, and our chief is a scoutmaster also. So that crazy idea we talked about, you might want to hit him up.
We have Cub Scouts about to be Boy Scouts right back there.
We had talked about security, that other art shows had invited scouts to do a sleepover on the property, more eyes on the site. The kids get to
that's a
camp
great
out,
idea.
and the art is a little safer with their presence.
That's actually a
You
really
get
good.
a- you get
idea.
a
Really good idea.
badge too for that, or?
You know a guy, right?
Know a guy?
That was my
Vice Mayor? All right. Curry?
Yeah, the only comment I have is I just think this is a wonderful event for our community. I don't see how we can't support it. It's just like you said, Mayor, to show off the assets of our city. And we've done so well at beginning to develop various events that are annual events, and I'm just so happy about that. And I thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and I look forward to it.
Great, thank you.
It's only about a third of a mile from City Hall to Sunrise Park, so people can walk that third of a mile, and
Right.
Shouldn't be that far.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Forte, wouldn't they, well, maybe the chief, wouldn't they be allowed to park along Riverside Drive as well?
Yeah, they can, but we're hoping for such an overwhelming amount of people that if we need off-site parking at City Hall, Sika Hall, the
Okay.
YMCA potentially, that it's only a third of a mile walk, so it's not that.
Okay.
Can we get a big sign down there that says parking at City Hall?
I don't know
Bus
where we-
provided?
We have
Put it-
our,
We're hoping that more of the vendors are going to park off-site and allow the parking lot in the park for the shoppers.
Right, right. All right, is there any other discussion? Yeah, Vice
Do we
Mayor.
need to make sure we preserve some of the boat parking next door?
The boat parking,
ramp-
boat slip parking is going to be for boaters.
Right,
We
I
are
know
gonna
there's a
allow
lot
some-
of, there's a lot of private passengers there, but we need to make sure that we keep the boat
Yeah.
slips available for
But
boats.
there are going to be some vendors parking in that parking area too. So we'll reserve some of the spots in the
Right.
center for boat trailer parking. That'll be fine.
We don't want to make some people happy and some people mad.
Right. Is there any other discussion needed?
we had to block that off.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, ladies. Yes. Now moving down to our public comments section. This is the audience's opportunity to address the commission about anything not on our regular agenda tonight. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the commission? Going once, going twice. And I'll go ahead and close public comments. And at this time, I would like to call forward two very special young men who are currently Cub Scouts. And I believe it's Zachary and Sean. Is it Sean?
Yeah.
All right, guys, you want to come on up here? So we have two Cub Scouts here, and in order for them to receive their next badge and then become Boy Scouts, one of the badges is to ask questions of their elected officials. So someone reached out and to us to see if we could do this. So it was fitting to do it tonight here with the whole commission, so they could ask the whole commission questions. So go ahead, guys, if you want to say your name into the microphones.
My name is Zachary. I'm Sean.
Good job, guys. So do you have questions prepared for us?
You want to go first? What kind of schooling would you guys like go to become like the commission of Holly Hill?
What kind of schooling? That's a great question. Well, this is an elected position, and technically there's no requirement on any specific schooling that you have. But after you become an elected official, there's actually a course that you can take that actually Commissioner Curry has gone all the way through, and I've gone all the way through myself, and it's called the Institute for Elected Municipal Officers. And you can find out many things about how to run government, about budgets, about all kinds of things. And then every year, all of us go to what's called the Florida League of Cities, which is also another training ground for elected officials. And so we can learn there and educate ourselves further on municipal government. Does anybody else have anything to add to that?
Also, we have to attend a ethics training.
That's
That's a
true.
requirement.
Every year we have to attend our 4 hours of ethics courses to get a refresher on that, and it's a requirement by the state. That's a great question. Sean, do you have a question?
How did you become the mayor so young?
That's a really good question.
The right place at the right time.
Well, when I was your age, I used to come to a lot of these city commission meetings, and my dad actually was a commissioner in District 4, and he became mayor. And so I kind of caught the bug early, I guess, got into local government. And when I became an adult, I became really interested in helping out my community. And so I became a commissioner 19 years to the day after my dad was sworn into District 4 as a commissioner. And so from there, I ran for mayor and was blessed and lucky enough to win. So, but we all have our reasons, and maybe we could go down the line here.
No one else up here is
why-
young but you.
They only asked the young one.
Age is just a number, John. But why did you first run? And by the way, John Penny is a former mayor. He was mayor right before I was mayor.
Well, I met a girl, we got married, bought a house in Holly Hill, had a couple of kids, joined the Chamber of Commerce.
Met a girl.
Became the president of the Chamber of Commerce, became the president of my Kiwanis Club. A couple citizens asked me to run for political office, and I ran for city commissioner, and I was a city commissioner for 3 terms, and then I ran for mayor after Mayor Johnson was the mayor, and I was successful. And then I still felt the calling to continue to serve my community, and I ran for city commission again. And so actually it was Mayor Villa's dad, then Mayor Johnson sat in the middle seat, then I sat in the middle seat, and now Mayor Villa sits in the middle seat again.
Didn't think about that.
It's like a soap opera.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Commissioner Curry?
Well, I met a guy.
Bought a house in Holly Hill.
Bought a house in Holly Hill. Had 2 kids. No, I worked for government. I worked for a police department down south, Ponce Inlet. And once I got done there and retired, I thought I was going to take life a little easy. Well, during the other time while I was working, I also volunteered here because your mom was part of our Police Explorer group with my husband for 20 years. I just loved serving my community. And so after I retired, I had some people ask me to run, and I thought, you're crazy. But I thought, why not? I love serving my community. I love helping. Well, I did, and people elected me. And I've been here for 8 years now, so I must be doing something right, or they just can't find somebody else to fill my seat, one of the two. But I love serving my community and doing this. So that's why I ran.
Commissioner Daniel?
I know a guy who knows a guy. I've been obviously cooking pizzas for a long time, feeding you and your brother, but for 30 years, 27, 28 years, whatever it was, I've been plugged into the community from a business standpoint, partnering. Asked a few times over the years, and when my kids kind of moved on and my son went to college and had the empty nest, I decided I'd take a gander and try it and see, and it's a whole different angle, but I like being plugged in all kinds of, business and government, and it gives me a chance to help my community as well.
Amen. Mayor Johnson?
I ran for just 2 simple reasons. One is I've been in business in this area for 40-something years, and I decided that I would run for political office now that I'm getting older, quite a bit older, to help out a lot of the other business people in Holly Hill, which I would say that probably 90% of the tax base is from business in Holly Hill. And so I come in to try to help the business people, and also I do everything under my power to help the younger generations. That's what the future generation coming up, I'll do anything I can. And if you don't believe it, just ask my little grandson.
Yeah, that's true.
He's 9 years old, and he's doing good at baseball right now.
And to wrap this whole thing up, you asked about age. I'm the youngest current mayor in the state of Florida. And what I want to tell you guys is that, it doesn't matter about your age as long as you have a passion. You guys are Cub Scouts right now. You enjoy serving your community, don't you? And that's the best trait that we can have in Americans. And so I applaud both of you. Whatever you want to do in life, you set your mind to it. You work hard because you're not entitled to it. Nobody owes you anything, but you can go out and you can earn it and you can do anything, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't, and don't let them tell you it's because of your age, okay? So are there any other questions that you guys have for us?
What kind of other jobs would you guys have to go for to become the commission?
Well, we don't get paid much, so we all do have jobs up here. And so, we all come from a different background, but I run a fundraising company for schools and nonprofits outside of my duties as mayor. Mr. Penny, if you'd like to.
I'm an all-state insurance agent.
Commissioner Curry.
I'm retired from Ponce Inlet Police Department.
I'm Pizza Johnny.
Yeah.
I know you do.
Everybody likes Pizza Johnny.
And I've worked with our local power company for the last 50 years, which is Florida Power and Light Company, and a great company, believe me.
Yep.
If you get a chance, get in with them.
And do you have a last question, Sean?
What's the ups and downs of being a mayor?
Oh, well, we'll take that by commissioner, the ups and downs. That's a good question. So
Wow.
the ups are obviously you get to serve your community. You get to make a difference. So all of us up here, we have one vote. I'm the mayor, and that only means that I get to run the meeting, but we all have the same vote up here. And you have to have most things, you have to have 3 votes. So we have to convince each other that who has the best idea for our city moving forward. So that's one of the best ups is doing something, seeing a vision, and then seeing it come to life and seeing the success that we've had in the last few years of how we're moving forward here in Holly Hill. That's one of the best ups. Some of the downs could be, which I wouldn't consider them downs, they're part of the job. You get lots of phone calls. You're never going to make everyone happy. Never. You're always going to upset someone with your decision. And so you have to be able to live with that, but you have to stand for what you believe in. And so I'll allow the floor open to whoever wants to join in on.
I think you said enough.
Yeah, I think I flash back to something your father told me when I was first elected, that no matter what decision we make, 1/3 of the people love it, 1/3 of the people hate it, and 1/3 of the people don't care about it at all. And what's frustrating about this job is it takes so long, and the process is so long for things to be accomplished, that we have a vision, we have an idea, and sometimes it takes years before we can actually raise enough money and budget to get the idea going. So that's the most frustrating thing for me, is how long it takes to get things done.
Agreed.
You have to be very patient. And I think my children and grandchildren have helped me earn my patience. So I try to be very patient with the process because, as Commissioner Penny said, things take a long time. And when you have your community wanting things done, you want to try to get them done as quickly as you can, but you also want to get them done right. But my greatest gift in this whole thing is being able to do good for my community and being able to do the good for young people like you, for my grandchildren, because you are our future. And we want to make sure that we leave you with something special here.
Amen. Anything to add, fellas?
Just people elect you to make a decision that sometimes they don't have the opportunity to make. So you just try to make the right decision. You weigh every angle.
Well said. So does that suffice for your badge? I'm getting nods of yes in the back. That's great. So how about we come down and take a picture with you guys? Will you do that with us? Great. Come down, right down here in front.
No, you are fine. Good questions, guys. That's great. Some good questions.
Good job. Good job, Sean. Good job, Zach. Zachary, sorry. Big smiles. Great job, guys. Great job. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Guys, stand right here for just a second. Thank you guys.
Those were really good questions. Tell your
All right.
mom I said hi, Sean.
Thank you, fellas. Appreciate it. And hey, if you work hard in a few years, you could beat my record of being the youngest elected official.
Gotta be
All right? Well, yeah, got to be 18. Coming for me. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, now we're going to continue down to the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second made by Commissioner Curry. Is there any discussion needed? Would anyone in the public like to speak to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now moving to the consent agenda, items 1 through 3. The action proposed is stated for each item on the consent agenda. Unless a city commissioner removes an item from the consent agenda, no discussion on individual items will occur, and a single motion will approve all items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any item on the consent agenda? Yes, Heidi. Okay, you can come up and speak now. Just name and
Hi.
address.
Hi there, I'm Heidi Heller of 460 Bridgewood Avenue, future excellent city of Holly Hill. As far as the resolution, I want to read this. It's concerned selling the real property to the highest and best bidder by retaining a realtor to sell the real property, by selling the real property by owner, I think that's the wrong by, or by donating the real property. It's my understanding that real property would be like land. And so a couple days ago, the property appraiser had 61 parcels of land listed for City of Holly Hill. I'm not aware of how we got this extra property. I'm curious to find out what's considered extra. Why did we get it to begin with? Like Fountainhead property, we had that, got a really good deal, but that's gone. I think the partnership that we had, that you talk about public-private partnerships, I think the people of Holly Hill are your main partners. They're the people that pay for the police, pay for the utilities, the maintenance of all the utilities, everything going around. So I don't feel it's good that you give away property because I've already paid for its maintenance and care. And I don't think it's just good. I don't think it should go to friends and family. I don't think it should go to nonprofits. I know the city has the old website had in the economic development page a link to LoopNet. And if you do want to go forward with the selling of the property, maybe you could not only put it on the realtor's website, but put it on the city's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on any item on the consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation, and I will ask that we remove item number 1 just for discussion. Seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and do that. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of items 2 and 3.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. On number 1, Joe, I just wanted to double check because I don't have it in front of me. There was the language that we spoke about the city will have the final determination, and
That's correct.
And it changed to city commission,
It
correct?
says the city commission will have the authority to dispose of any surplus real property.
Okay, and that kind of addresses your question as well. This isn't about giving away any property. This is about selling a couple properties that we have that have no benefit to our community to keep. They're not parks. We're not giving away parks. None of that. Everything will be legally, advertised and sold through that way. But additionally, it will have to, any property that we sell will have to come back to the city commission for that approval. So it gives that extra bonus there. So is there any other discussion on item 1?
Just like to make a comment that when the city doesn't own it anymore, it becomes a taxable piece of property.
Right.
And just for clarification, the only reason this is before you is that you used to say that we had to sell it by competitive bid. That precluded us from hiring a realtor and selling it that way. This isn't new from the standpoint of you disposing of surplus property. We dispose of surplus property, we always have, there's a process for that.
Right.
This, we were just limited to having to use a bidder, and y'all had actually retained a realtor. And we needed to change part of the purchasing rules that allowed us to either go out for better bids or by obtaining a realtor to list it. That's the only change you're really making with this policy
Right.
change.
Thank you, Scott. With that, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. There's nothing on our regular agenda tonight, so we'll move to public hearing, ordinance 2020-0-3024.
Ordinance number 2020-0-3024 by title only for second and final reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, regulating mobile home vehicles, amending section 114-904 of the city's code to add definitions, update permitting requirements, restrictions, operating requirements, and establish enforcement procedures, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. You had a question?
Mr. Simpson said mobile home,
Yeah.
Right.
mobile food.
Mobile food.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute.
I'm trying something with my eyes, so it's just a little.
Try opening them.
Ortho K is getting adjusted. One eye's distance, one eye is reading, so.
So, Mr. Simpson, do you need to read it again?
No.
Okay.
Mobile food.
All right. Good catch, Danielle. All right.
Night stuff.
And with that, we'll hand it over to Mr. Walker.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Yeah, we,
Back on October 25th, 2016, the City Commission adopted Ordinance 2981, and this had to do with mobile food vending within the city. Based on comments through the years from mobile food vendors as well as property owners that host such activity, it was thought that the city may benefit from refining the current regulations, and that's the purpose of the ordinance before you this evening. Some of the changes that this ordinance presents, for example, the current ordinance allows a food truck or a mobile food vendor to be on a property one night or one day a week. And in response to requests from mobile food vendors and their hosting site owners, this ordinance proposes to extend the time permitted for a site to host a mobile food vendor from 1 day a week to a maximum of 4 days a week within a calendar week. The proposed ordinance also establishes a minimum distance of 200 feet between a mobile food vendor and the main entrance to any restaurant unless the restaurant owner allows a shorter distance. Currently, our regulations do not have such a provision. Additionally, the proposed ordinance permits a mobile food vendor to locate in a residential zone when
Everything all right over there?
A little coronavirus going on.
Oh, no.
Let's drink some Heinekens.
Sorry, Mr. Walker. You can continue.
Quite all right.
Lyme disease.
So, additionally, this ordinance permits a mobile food vendor to locate in a residential zone when providing catering services for a private event. Additionally, it defines what is meant by catering, a commissary, mobile food vehicle, mobile food rally, mobile food vendor. These are terms that are currently not defined in our regulations. The proposed ordinance also more specifically addresses the issue of enforcement of these regulations with regard to mobile food vending within the city. Some changes just to be aware of that occurred since the first reading. On Section 2, E and F have been added. E allows folks to pay either a daily fee to host a mobile food vendor or to have a one-time annual fee as established by the City Commission. And F says that any hosting site property owner has to have a business tax receipt. Section...
Right there, Mr. Walker, Vice Mayor.
Just one thing on the fees, Brian. If this approves tonight, goes into effect tomorrow, when do we set the fee schedule?
The daily fee schedule would remain as has already been established. We would have to bring a resolution before you to establish an annual one.
Okay.
So at this point, we haven't had anyone interested in an annual fee, but we can have that before this commission fairly quickly.
Yes, Commissioner Kerr.
What about, we talked about the residential areas and us being able to have a food truck at our home, or not us, but any residents can have a food truck for a party or whatever. They wouldn't have a business tax receipt.
No, this, for residential, where you have where the truck is hired for a catering type service, that wouldn't apply.
But where does it say that in here?
It doesn't specifically exclude it.
Should we have that in here, Scott?
Well, it's excluded in the definitions. We went over this at the last meeting, if you recall. If you go to the definitions section,
I've read a lot of bills. Excuse me.
I'll have to remind you.
Okay. If we're covered, I'm good. I just don't remember seeing anything about it. Did you see anything about it?
Yeah, it talks, I read it.
I didn't see anything.
I think it's on page 8.
We did find it at the last one.
Well, I'm not betting lunch yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
I want to make sure I'm right first.
Oh, you know what? No, what was excluded was ice cream trucks. We talked about it.
Maybe I should have bet lunch.
Well, and
Add a statement that this doesn't apply to residential homes that are hosting a mobile food.
Yeah, I just
vendor
want to
for
make sure
catering.
it's
Yes.
covered. Because, you know, next year, you could be dealing with a different commission that has, you know, well, I guess it wouldn't matter because they could change it then too, so whatever.
So just, it'll be reflected in the motion.
Yeah.
So you can continue, Mr. Walker.
The sections 3I and 4A are related in that they both allow, they've been altered to allow a mobile food vendor in a residential district for catering.
Okay.
3K has removed, in first reading, it had a provision that said that you can have that there would be a 16-day maximum for a food truck to locate on a property within a calendar month. That 16-day maximum has been removed, and it's simply 4 days a week.
Mayor,
Yes.
Commissioner Penny, if you go to letter I, it says mobile food vehicles are not allowed in residential areas or the residential portion of a mixed-use PUD and may not locate any closer than 100 feet from a residential zoned area. This restriction shall not apply to the mobile food vendors hired to cater a private event in a residential zone.
So then we don't need to add language.
It's covered.
just for the record, that's Commissioner Curry.
Yeah.
What did I say?
Please don't get us confused.
We can still clarify it.
Hashtag 2 cents. Just had to throw that out there.
He said throw that out there.
So we can still clarify it.
I
Yeah,
just,
it was-
I don't see
We'll
where.
clarify it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was we spoke about it at the last meeting, and the intent was to allow for catered vehicles, catered food trucks in residential communities on private property for
And
opening.
it says that
It
there.
says it in I. Yeah.
But it doesn't say anything about the business tax
Right.
receipt, and so,
It says this restriction, referring to the 100 feet.
thank you.
So who needs the BTR? The food truck still needs the BTR, the license.
Not the
Business.
food truck. The food truck gets an annual
They get an
permit.
annual license, but the
Right.
residential property owner does not need a BTR.
Correct. Correct.
But it
Yes, would
says,
just be
up on-
businesses.
her question was on.
But
the
it
previous
says,
F says the hosting site property owner must have an active BTR.
Okay.
So we can clarify it.
okay, thank you.
And they're not going to come in and get a permit either.
It doesn't, I want it in here.
All right, Mr. Walker, you have the floor.
You guys get everything you want. I'm
Well,
sorry.
So do we want to have a permit required by the homeowner to have the food truck?
I don't think that's
I don't
necessary.
think so.
That the food truck be,
Just let the food truck be the licensed person.
Yeah.
okay, so we'll have to clarify that as well.
Thank you.
And those were the changes made with regard to the first reading. And so, based on this, staff recommends that the City Commission adopt an ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, regulating mobile food vehicles, amending Section 114-904 of the City Code to add definitions, update permitting requirements, restrictions, operating requirements, and establish enforcement procedures, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Brian, did you talk about 4H?
I was going to talk about that one.
Yeah, he mentioned it.
4H was mentioned in the...
He mentioned
He
it.
mentioned it.
Okay, I was reading while you were.
Well, Vice Mayor, would you like to bring it up now and then?
Sure. I mean,
Your
we want to
concerns?
discuss it now?
Yeah,
Um,
because I don't want 3 amendments to a
Yeah,
motion.
so, I heard Commissioner Danio's concerns, and I think the 200 feet is arbitrary. It's just a number that was pulled out of the air. And I tried to figure out some way to be fair to all, and I went back to some of the changes that we did with restaurants and the sale of alcohol next to a church, and it basically just says it can't be adjacent. And so if we picked on Commissioner Danio's restaurant, let's say Heavenly Cheesecake wanted to have a food truck. It's not 200 feet away, but there's 2 parcels between that property, there's a vacant property, then there's a barber shop, then there's Commissioner Danio's restaurant. I think it should just simply say, no mobile food vendor may locate adjacent to an active restaurant unless written permission is given by the restaurateur. I don't know if that satisfies it, but just, it seems more fair and it's just not an arbitrary number.
So could not be adjacent to what?
An active restaurant.
Active restaurant. So the only question I would have is for Scott on that, because we talked about it last time about, are we limiting or whatnot, competition? So we have grounds to be able to say you cannot be adjacent. So we can regulate that.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you
Because
can
I thought
prohibit,
differently.
you can prohibit food trucks altogether, so.
So you can say where they can go and where they can't go. Okay. I thought that was the hang-up last meeting.
It was, but I went back to Brian and we talked, and some of those lawsuits that he mentioned at the last meeting actually occurred outside of the state, and there hasn't been one in this area
Okay.
where regulating distance was challenged. So that's why we felt that we can put that back in.
Okay. And I think you made an important clarification, though, that it cannot be adjacent to unless written permission of that person, because obviously there's going to be some scenarios where,
We just have all kinds of different sized lots
right?
in our cities.
But not important enough.
So, Brian, we can make that change?
Yes.
Yeah? All right.
I think Commissioner Danio wanted to say something.
Danny,
Yeah.
Mr. Danny
Mr. Danio.
is not in favor of this whatsoever, and I have my reasons. I don't know if it's timing or if it's after Brian or when you want to.
Just one
Yeah.
minute. Yep.
Sure.
Is there any other clarifications on any of the singular points?
No, I'm good.
Do you have any, Commissioner Johnson, on any singular points? Okay, and with that, and we'll wait for that opinion
Sure.
in a second. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Walker?
No. The only, and this is one of those very rare outlier type things, but it has happened where people do spite strips. So they will take a piece of their property may be adjacent to another piece of property. They will take a 10-foot strip, split it off, deed it to back to themselves or to a corporation that they have. It gets its own parcel ID number, and so theoretically, they are no longer adjacent. And I've seen a lot of that in a previous jurisdiction where I worked. I don't see it happening here a lot, but that is why oftentimes there are hard numbers given to distance requirements, because when you have a distance, it doesn't matter what the person does,
Wow.
even if they were to do what's called a spite strip.
But don't we have minimum lot sizes, and you can't subdivide it and make a non-conforming lot?
That's as far as a buildable lot is concerned. But there's nothing that says that you have to have a buildable lot. You can take a 5-foot strip, split it off from your prop, sell it to the guy next to you, without going through a subdivision process, because you're not creating a buildable lot. So that's
We'll
just,
never
food
know
for thought.
either, because it will go,
They'll just go record it at the,
they'll record it at the clerk's office.
Yeah.
And years ago, we tried to ask the clerk to,
Let us know.
well, yeah, say, like, if it's you don't do a meets and bounds legal description within a city. Because that means you're creating a lot. If it's a lot block number, go ahead and record it, but if it's a meets and bounds description, submit it to the city to make sure it went through the legal process for subdivision. And the response was, that they have to record, except for recording any deed that meets the statutory requirements under law, and that's not a statutory requirement. So we'll never know what happens.
Right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Now, at this time, we'll open it up to public comments. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this ordinance tonight? Yes, sir, in the back. When you come up, just state your name and your address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes to speak.
Pat Johnson, Cornerstone Foods, Winter Park, Florida. We have a restaurant here in your town, and I would discourage any leniency on this particular topic. Briefly, I see I only have a few minutes here. We're putting a restaurant in over in Deltona. You think you buy a lot and just build it? No. The lot has to be inspected for turtles and birds first. This costs thousands of dollars for this inspection. Then the surveys. Then the city comes out. By the time you get this building built, you're over $500,000. A truck, how does that compare? With inspections, the professional Department of Regulation that inspects us, our hand washing sinks have to be certain temperatures. Our detergents have to be certain strengths. Our refrigeration equipment has to be at a certain temperature to maintain the food. Frozen food has to be frozen at certain temperatures. They come in twice a year and they inspect us for this. Rodents, pests, all that is inspected and has to be controlled. On a truck, some of these trucks, depending on what they serve, are inspected by the Department of Agriculture, the same group that inspects gas pumps. So really, I would discourage any leniency. If there hasn't been a review committee to look at these topics that I brought up, maybe it's time to table it and take another look. Serving the public, potentially making people ill, it's a very serious thing. It's not something that we take lightly at any of our restaurants. And again, with these trucks, not to mention all those fees that we pay the city of Deltona, over $6,000 just to open, trucks don't pay it. The municipal taxes you collect on cell phones, power bills, water bills, trash, sewer, trucks don't pay it. The 30-some people we employ in this town, half of them which walk to work, which means they live here, trucks don't do that. It's important to recognize the community and the service to the community and who's going to benefit from it. I think the trucks are fun. There's always a time and place for that. But in the city here, I think it's going to hurt local business. I think there's a lot of risk involved also that may not have been brought up. I have some Harvard Law School people that have investigated it, the North American Department of Restaurant Management. I could bore you with some of their quotes and but it's a common sense. It's a common sense issue. You're talking about a truck. Our restrooms have to be a certain number of feet from the food preparation area. How do you do that on a truck? Where's the restroom at? What about public restrooms? The people that use the truck, where do they go? In the lot? Nearby? Behind a dumpster? I mean, it's just apples and oranges here with what we provide and what they come in. It seems like a real fun thing, but it's a serious thing. You don't want people getting sick. You don't want to contribute to that. I'd be glad to answer any questions about food preparation, storage, our inspection process, how serious it is.
At this time, it's just for you to make your comments to the commission.
I think I pretty much mentioned everything that they talk about that can be detrimental to the city. One of the things that I noticed was there's nothing about insurance. We have a $2 million insurance policy. McDonald's has a $3 million insurance policy. Checkers requires a $1 million insurance policy. What do you have on a truck? PIP? Collision? What when somebody does get hit by the truck or get sick? Who's going to cover that? Who permitted the truck to be there in the first place? Where does that fall? Who's vicariously liable? 57% of all business lawsuits are against business owners who make less than $1 million a year. So when you look at big chain restaurants, they're doing far more than that compared to a truck. They're going to have those policies in place to ensure that people are covered and protected. All the occupational permits that are required by the city. When the fire department comes in and makes sure we have the right equipment, the right lighting for people to get out in case of power failures. When redundancy, when a refrigeration unit goes down, we have other devices that will maintain the food without delay. Nothing spoils or goes bad. So many things when you compare it. And just our overhead to be a brick and mortar store compared to a truck, you know. You're talking about a business here in town that pays $13,000 a year in property tax. What does a truck pay? Tag and title fees? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this ordinance tonight? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we'll go ahead and entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is that,
But do I need to insert
With the
amendment?
clarification,
Yeah, let me,
We don't discuss here.
for the section,
4H.
well, prior to 4H, under the definitions for a hosting site, we want to add the sentence that says excluding residential properties where food trucks are located for private parties or private catering events. That'll address Commissioner Penny Curry's question.
and clarifying that a resident doesn't need a permit.
Right.
Doesn't have to come in for that.
That exclude, if you exclude residential properties, then.
Okay, just,
Yeah, we're taking them out of the definition of a hosting site, so all the restrictions that apply to a hosting site will not apply to residential properties, which there's going to be a private party or catering event.
okay.
And then as far as H, what was the final determination on the distance of the,
My suggestion was no mobile food vendor shall locate adjacent to an active restaurant unless written permission given by the restaurant.
okay, now, the only thing, did you mention that before? No.
It's already written in here as far as.
The current issue with the barber? No. All right, well, in the situation that we're talking specifically about is Sorrento's Pizza, the adjoining parcel of land is a parking lot. The barber shop is one parcel over.
Really?
So it's
Two
actually,
different parcels.
he has two parcels of land that are separate according to the property appraiser's website. So in that scenario, the food truck could be on the site where the barber shop building is, because there's a vacant piece of land that has a parking lot between the barber shop and the restaurant. So that's why the distance, arbitrary as it may be more important because of that specific scenario, does not answer Commissioner Danio's concern.
Commissioner Curry?
can I make a suggestion of 100 feet?
Want me to withdraw my motion and you make the motion?
Yeah, withdraw the motion,
No
because we're not,
second.
yeah.
Withdraw the motion.
Yeah.
We don't want to do 17
Thank you,
amendments.
yes.
Can we have discussion before?
So the floor's open right now, so we're entertaining a motion, and then we'll be able to talk on that motion. So if you have a motion, you can,
Motion on.
So.
well, you can make a motion.
I'm going to make a motion for approval with the changes of 2F to include that does not apply to residential properties.
It's not 2F, it's a change to the definition of hosting
Yeah,
site.
if you just make
Well,
your
it's
motion.
2F.
No,
But it's-
hosting definition.
They're going to change the definition.
Okay,
Change the
Doesn't
definition of
apply
hosting
to
site.
residential.
okay. So then what, I'm lost. What am I changing?
If we insert the language that I read
In 2F.
in,
No, into the
to
definition.
the definition of hosting site. Then you don't-
Okay.
Then you don't have to worry about 2F.
Right. And then there's the question mark of 4-H.
So change the definition and the language for 4-H to read 100 feet instead of 200.
I got to take a measurement.
You're not going to convince me.
That's what I'm looking for.
And I think if you let me speak, I'll probably convince at least two of you.
The distance.
You'll be able to.
And you'll be able to,
Motion.
I
No, I'm
promise.
looking for Google Maps. Well, how about this? I second the motion, then Commissioner Daniel can talk about it.
Yeah, good idea. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we'll go to you first, Danny.
Okay. You said to the Cub Scouts earlier that your job was to convince your fellow commissioner. That's my job tonight, because I have to look at this as, barring the Serenos, I know it's hard and for people to look at it and say, well, he's got a, bias, but I'm 32 years in the book, so I'm not as threatened as a lot of other places. Been here the longest as far as eateries, so like I said, I'm not as threatened. But I look at it as my job as an elected official is to see, is this beneficial to our city? And I don't think it is. And I'm going to give you some reasons, because the gentleman pointed out the fees. Okay, we're going to get a minimal fee for an annual permit, which probably takes about 3 days from a rent in a brick and mortar restaurant to equal. Okay? Where's the business tax receipt? Is it in our city, or is it in the commissary in the place that they're getting their food from, wherever that may be? We have a number of empty buildings that we're looking to fill, and the thought of a 4-day-a-week possibility would less than entice some outside group to come in and open up something in an eatery, knowing that there's a possibility of a 4-day-a-week food truck. The utilities. I mean, I'm this gentleman, he's in the big leagues as far as chains, but even the little guys, it's $2,000 plus a year in water. You got the gas, local gas company. I mean, what do the food trucks pay? Okay? We talked about convenience. The gentleman talked about how it's convenient to the places that are like job sites. McDonald's delivers. There's not a place out there that doesn't deliver between, as far as either inclusive or Uber Eats and DoorDash and all these other places. The foreman shows up to pick up food, brings it back to the crew. So you can rule out the convenience factor. That doesn't hold any water. The hot spots. A mobile food truck will have the ability to go and sit in front of Harry's Main Street Eatery, who sits there and struggles for 50 weeks a year when there's a project going with permission from the neighbor to capture 80% of that week when there's something going on in, let's say, LPGA or some other project. And then there's local eateries that are there that look for those things to come along. It's bad enough we saturate our city and the county with the bike weeks and all these other out-of-town vendors that pay no local revenue. They take their money and they kind of leave the state. So I look at, what do other cities do? Other cities have industrial zoning. They keep it away from the main drag. They have distance factors, 250, 300 feet. At least they give a fair chance to somebody who's not going to be discouraged by a 4-day-a-week. We voted on this 3 years ago, and we looked up and we researched, and we had 1-day-a-week food trucks brought more business to brick and mortar. And the reason they did it was because these fancy glitter and gold food trucks would have a certain following. This FaceTime stuff, Facebook stuff, whatever it is, they have a following. They would bring them, people would see other places. That's how you bring more business. 4-day-a-week food truck is another eatery on wheels. That's all it is. It's not a food truck like we're talking about. Okay, let's talk about our intentions. The original intent of our food truck was just that, to entice food trucks to come in for certain things, to kind of glamorize our city for, okay? Maybe have a once-a-week appreciation at Cunningham Gas or whatnot. Okay, now our current intent, we got to be careful because, you know, I'm going to remind this commission how we spent months fixing an ordinance that was loosely written about outside items. I don't think they intended for mattresses, clothing, strollers and all that. But yeah, we had to kind of fix all that because we put in something that was maybe, or we're trying to put in something that's catering to maybe a brewery. And yet we're kind of opening up the whole city, we're exposing the whole city to potential problems in the future. So if a food truck wants to be successful in our city, which of 13,000 people, there's only going to be a certain amount of disposable income, I say let them rent one of these buildings. Work out of a building like everybody else does. The property taxes are paid through either the rents or the owners. I mean, you know, what's their skin in the game if we give them $125 a year annual permit and they can go wherever they want? I just don't see that makes, you know, it's like, I've been in the business a long time. You guys, you know, I mean, everybody has their specialty, but you're not looking at it from the inside of a restaurant eyes to see how this is going to affect the whole city. We worked so hard with Gina's and helping Robin put improvements and everything else, just so Kim might look at a food truck 100 feet away or next door. It's kind of like we're contradicting our original plan from last year. I mean, you know, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, you know, regardless of what you guys do, I'm going, you know, I'm not in favor of this for sure, so.
I appreciate the impassioned speech.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Danio. We'll go to the motion maker next if you'd like to have any discussion.
I'm waiting on some information from Mr. Forte.
Okay,
I can't
all right.
get that.
Then we would go
information
to
right
the seconder, but he's also getting information. Would you like to weigh in on this, Commissioner Johnson?
I've never been in the food service business any at all, or know anything about it whatsoever, but I've been in business a long time, and I have to really listen and just completely saturate me with what he just got up and said about. I know that the fees you pay for this, the insurance you pay, the taxes you pay, the upkeep you pay, and everything to furnish the parking for people and everything you have to do doing business, to have someone else just come in without having to pay any of that and compete with you. And I agree with what you say as well. It really makes sense that you have to encourage the local business people that pay the taxes here and pay the insurance companies here, that furnish insurance for it, and all the different fees that they have to pay along with it, and the upkeep of their property and everything. That, to me, I look at it from a business point of view, more than a food service point of view. I mean, everything you said when you came up to that microphone a while ago made total sense to me. I've been in business in this city for almost 50 years, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the only thing that I see my point of view from it, but I don't know anything about the food, but I do know that you gotta have that inspection on that food, you gotta have all the different temperatures and the different things, it's all regulated. And even to start a property nowadays, with making sure that turtles and the birds are all protected and all that, it's 100% correct, I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have to say about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Do you have your information now, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'm
Still looking.
Mayor,
looking, yeah.
Just so everybody knows what I said to Commissioner Penny and Commissioner
Curry.
was the distance, according to the language in the current code, the distance is measured from the front door of the restaurant 100 feet. Well, that still is, the adjoining property that we're talking about, the barber shop, is still within that distance. It's at least 150 feet if you measure from the front door.
Don't factor me into this equation.
It's just an example.
Okay,
It's
yeah,
just- it's
because
just-
you know,
it's an
I'm
example.
used to your problems.
Yeah.
I'm
It's an example, and it's just one.
Just a
There's many
typical restaurant.
There's many other examples. I can use Pat's restaurant down at the south end of the city, front door of his to the adjoining property. You can use any one of them. So adjoining may not be the answer. Distance may also be an issue.
Well, I
It may be
would
cleaner
also-
if we did a property line.
One of the things not clear, we go from the main entrance to the vendor. So where do you measure it to? I was talking with Joe, the closest edge of the food truck? Well, then all of a sudden that food truck backs up 1 foot, and now he's outside that. So it may be to say from the closest edge of the property with the restaurant to the closest edge of the property upon which the food vendor will be located on. Now, if you had a very big parcel of property, for instance, the Florida Healthcare Building, or the shopping centers, the big parcels, okay, you touch one corner of that, if that one corner is within 200 feet or whatever of the two parcels, that's going to exclude the whole property, because that property is included touching within the 200 feet, even though it may only be a 10-foot section or a little corner of it, it's going to exclude the whole thing. But it makes it easier, because you got the flip side, you could have people moving around on the property just to avoid the restriction, but it's still the same parcel has the food vendor truck on it. It's just moved back a little farther. So did it really benefit the restaurant? Probably not, because it's the same parcel. They just shifted it on the property to get outside the distance. So if you're going to go this route, I would throw out saying the closest edge of the property upon which the restaurant is on, 200 feet out to the closest edge of any property that the food vendor's on. The food vendor has to be located on property that's more than 200 feet, edge to edge, between the property that's on the restaurant and the property upon which the food vendor is going to be located. And that would make it easier for staff to measure, let me put it that way. And you wouldn't have a situation where somebody's moving their food vendor truck on a parcel just to get outside that 200-foot distance.
So 200 feet from property line to property line?
It's a thought. Now,
But the motion we have is 150.
No, 100.
whatever you all come up with, and just understand the downside to what I'm saying is that you do have very large
150.
parcels, and it could just nick a corner of that parcel that's a large parcel, then that's going to exclude the whole parcel. But there's good and bad with this, so.
Right. Did you want to comment now?
Was it 100? I completely understand Mr. Johnson's point of view. Commissioner Danio, appreciate your comments as well. And I definitely do not want to do anything to hurt our brick and mortar stores. But I also realize that there is, I can't compare food trucks and brick and mortars. Totally different. They serve a different purpose. To me, in my mind, I look at the food trucks as being at Sunrise Park for events that we may have. Being down at, I guess, the brewery or the distillery, whoever might have events down there, because I know that they have events down there a lot. So, different areas like that in our city that people may want to have events, that these food trucks draw people. I know up in Ormond, man, they have some huge things going on with food trucks. So I really don't think you can consider food trucks and brick and mortars the same. But we do need to protect our brick and mortar food stores just as well, because they do pay more. They pay more in taxes. But we do have some restrictions in here for our food trucks. I don't think they just go without being inspected, because what I'm reading in my documents here, they have to be inspected. So I don't think we're going to run the risk of, spoiled or bad food being served and things of that nature, because it's not like the food truck of 10 or 15, 20 years ago. Then I would have concerns. Things are done a little differently now. I am going to go ahead and make an amendment to my motion to make it 200 feet from property line to property line, to try to protect our brick and mortars as well.
Does that exclude the entire parcel, or just they can be at 201 feet?
Nope, entire parcel.
Entire parcel.
So if the parcel is very long, if the parcel is 200 feet long, then you're 400 feet from
A business.
the business.
Just
To
an
make sure
eater.
I understand what the,
An eatery. I mean, we're only doing this for the eateries to try to protect them.
right, so it'll take.
It's not really any business in town, it's just the eateries.
But now we have a dozen eateries on Ridgewood Avenue,
Okay?
so.
But I don't think we have a dozen locations
didn't
for
mention-
food trucks on Ridgewood
You
Avenue.
didn't mention one example where a food truck would be on, you mentioned events at Sunrise Park.
Sunrise,
we have that
brewery,
now.
whatever. I
don't
know
need it
some
4
of them
days a
go
week.
to different businesses on
Yeah, but 4
Ridgewood,
days a
maybe like
week?
Cunningham or wherever.
4 days a week?
But, well, I mean, if they're serving lunch
That's
there.
the thing, 4 days a week at Sunrise, that's not gonna happen.
Well, we do have a motion that we have to tend to, an amendment to the motion. I just want to take a second before I ask for a second to make sure that it's all in there.
I believe so.
Okay. Is there a second to her amendment? Seeing none, the amendment will fail.
It's not the
And that-
first time
that's
that ever
okay.
happened.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We still have a motion on the floor and a second.
Go ahead, John.
And I'll allow Vice Mayor Penny to speak now. He was the second of the motion.
No, I agree with the distance. I'm concerned. The original ordinance as presented to us said 200 feet. And my concern is if we start putting in, although it was my starting this thing, if you start putting in property line, now you're, in some instances, 400 feet away, was an example. And let's not kid ourselves. We're doing this for the brewery, right?
So it's not gonna matter.
So it is gonna matter.
They're next door to Chucherias.
You're next door to Chucherias.
200 feet or 20 feet, it's not gonna matter, they're right there.
Right. So I don't know what the solution is. I just.
Right.
You just said it.
Here's, can I just talk about some of the things that I've heard in my concerns and my
Yeah.
arguments? I mean, we're kind of
It's
going off.
your floor, Vice Mayor.
Well, I heard some concerns about licensing and permitting. There's no less than 7 or 8 things that someone has to jump through, including being inspected by our fire marshal and our fire chief, the state. And I don't want this to become a battle between brick and mortar restaurants and food trucks. I want this to be something good for our city. And some of us, we may have to agree to disagree. But I'm looking at this as a different view, because I don't own a restaurant. And all due respect to Mr. Daniel, he's been here for 30 years, and his dad was here for 30 years before him. So, not in Holly Hill, but here. And I look at it a different way. I look at businesses that pay 10 times the property taxes I pay on my business, like Mark Madden, that invite food trucks as an accessory use to his property, not to compete with any other restaurant in town. Don't kid you. He doesn't invite the taco truck down there because he likes the guy. He invites him down there that maybe he might buy some drywall screws or a screwdriver or some weed and feed while you're waiting on your taco. I look at our city in so many ways as an incubator. We start small businesses back on State and Carswell and some small locations, even on US 1, because the rent is affordable here. And many of these businesses outgrow their space in our city. Anyone hear of a company called Universal Pest Control? They were at Skip's Boots here. Anyone remember Skip's Boots? They outgrew it after a couple years. They moved to a big business park in Ormond Beach. And I look at the food trucks that way. Every person, I shouldn't say every person, many people that I've spoken to that own food trucks have an eventual goal of having a brick and mortar restaurant. But because of the reasons we heard earlier, they can't afford $500,000. I heard a statistic talking about restaurants that generate less than $1 million in revenue. My golly, wouldn't you like to generate $1 million in revenue, Mr. Danio?
I would love that.
I mean, that's a whole different league. But I see people that, I'll pick on Southern State of Mines. He goes around, he cooks his shrimp and grits, and once a month, he is the host chef at Rose Villa on Granada.
What are you doing it for?
If he could save up enough money, he will open up a restaurant. And that's kind of the way I look at it, is that if I don't want to have a competition, I think we're spending a lot of time on something that I hope becomes a problem, but I don't think it's really going to become a problem. And we have to remember that many of the commissaries for these food trucks that operate all around Volusia County are on State and Carswell Avenue in our city. Drive down there. Look at all the food trucks. Look at all the beach trucks that are parked in our city that are located here, that someone's paying property taxes on. So the only thing that concerns me about the ordinance is this 200 feet distance. I support it. I trust that this commission has enough wherewithal that if it becomes a problem, we'll amend it. I certainly don't want to compete with restaurants in town. I certainly don't want to compete with a brand new restaurant that just opened up and we drive them out of business because there's a food truck next door. But I think it would be helpful. I just wish that where our brewery and our distillery were, I wish they located in a commercial district or into an industrial district like they did in Ormond Beach. But they're in the CC1, so when we change it for them, which is what we're really talking about here, it is going to affect the whole US 1 corridor. So I'm looking, I support the ordinance. The only thing I'm not certain of is how do we treat the feet, the 100 feet, property line. It's going to become a nightmare if you're measuring to the front door. Well, that's not our front door, that's our side door. I mean, when you go to John's restaurant, there's a front door for some people, but the side door is the front door for a lot of people.
That depends what door you close or when you park.
Depends on how well you know 'em, which door you're going in. So that's the only thing I have a problem with. I'm looking for you some guidance.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about helping one business, why are we opening it up to a citywide ordinance?
Because that's where zoning laws apply.
And why do they need 4 days a week if they're there 2 nights a week? I
Well,
mean, basically, the brewery, we have 4-day-a-week drunks. I mean, come on.
well, here's
It's open 6 nights a week.
yeah, and it's packed every night.
Tell them to go to Chucherias.
So
I think what we're missing is
They're right next door.
Chucherias is a $100 dinner. A food truck is a $15 dinner.
yeah.
Why don't you ask Chucherias if they'll put out a $15 dinner for the brewery before you allow food trucks in our city?
I don't know.
All right, well, so now I'm going to take the floor and make some comments. And first, Commissioner Denny, I want to applaud you because of your passionate speech. But as Commissioner or Vice Mayor Penny said, you understand being a restaurant. And even though you're not necessarily opposed to this because of your restaurant, you see it from a different standard as maybe John and I would see it. So I think when we boil this down, we're here to create solutions to problems. And the problem came to us that the brewery could only have someone there 1 day a week, and it wasn't enough for their customer base. And that's a valid problem that they have. And then we ran into the zoning issue. So when you boil it down, that was the problem. And seemed like a simple solution, always does, right? Seemed like a simple solution to say, okay, well, here's how we fix this. We make this impactful citywide change. And hearing you speak tonight has actually given me pause, a lot of pause, much more pause than I thought that I would have, because I agree with the gentleman that came up. I agree with you that that sometimes we can try to fix a problem and have overarching ramifications. And so it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Now, with that being said, we're here to fix problems. And we haven't had a problem yet with the food trucks. There hasn't been a detriment to business that I've heard of at all, and nobody's came to me and said, they're taking my business away.
That's because we only have 1 day a week.
Right, and that may be because we only have 1 day a week. So, and so maybe if we change to 4, that might be an issue. And if it was an issue, that is something that definitely could come back to this commission for us to look at changing. And I think that, you know, look, all of us up here, I know all of us support our small businesses, support our brick and mortar businesses that are paying our taxes, because as Roy Johnson said earlier on a different item, you know, they pay the vast majority of our taxes that we take in. We got to protect you guys, our brick and mortars. So, but now when I go back to the original question of why are we doing this? To fix a problem, and primarily the only one that I've heard from is the brewery. And I support the brewery. I want that to work out there. They need food, as you said, that's much more affordable, not like Chucheria's. But with this ordinance, my question is since Chucheria's is there, will they even be allowed to have that? I guess it would have to be with written approval. Is that what we're thinking of? Just a quick yes or no?
As I understand it, it's the landlord's decision.
Landlord, okay.
Mayor, real quick, is anybody even here from the brewery?
No.
Must be pretty important for the brewery.
Well, and, you know, they've talked to me a lot about this, but there's my dilemma. I mean, there's a lot of pause. We also don't have a lot of businesses here that are pounding down our door to do this as well. You gave me a lot of pause, Commissioner. So I don't know what the will of this commission will be. I know you're definite no. It seems like you guys are yeses moving forward with this. This is something that I wish we could have foreseen, all of the differing opinions and the troubles we would have, because we really should have workshopped this. It's obvious. So we're workshopping it from the dais. My question is, Scott, if this does not pass tonight, then does it completely fail and cannot come back to us for a set amount of time?
I don't think we have a prohibition on a set amount of time, but if it fails, I think there's an argument that it is over. It may have to start over again.
For a first and second reading.
First and second reading. It could be tabled to a date certain for to continue the second reading. John, I just want to say, what this language says about consent, it's the restaurant owner, not the landlord.
Okay.
So the restaurant, as worded, the restaurant
No,
owner.
I think the agreement there is controlled by the landlord from Mr. Exonitis.
Well, I'm just saying that the written approval.
Oh, I understand.
To be within the distance has to be the restaurant owner, not the property owner.
It would come from the restaurant.
The restaurant has to give consent.
Interesting. And I don't even know how they feel about it, Vice Mayor.
Would, Commissioner Daniel, I hear your objection is more for the number of days than the distance between them. Am I hearing you right?
I just think when you're talking, Holly Hill's a 5-day work week. Let's not fool ourselves. There is no weekend. It's a manufactured industrial place. It's 5 days a week. 4 days a week, you're pretty much putting out 80% of your, you know, I mean, that's a lot of,
Right.
you know, 1 day a week when we did this a few years ago, I looked at it, would it help our city? I thought it would, and maybe it does. And as a restaurant owner, I didn't feel anything because I thought, you know, they're bringing in this, now you're not really talking now. Now you're talking just basically a eatery, like I said earlier, on wheels to be able to pick up and move and kind of follow the hot spots. And for what? For $125 a year? It just doesn't add up.
Does it make you feel any better if we go to 3 days?
I'm not going to feel any better at all, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, if you're talking about the brewery, limit it to the night, you know, after 5 p.m., where there's really no threat of anybody, because most of the business is daytime. They're all working men.
No, but I know
Who's going to be at the brewery that's going to eat at, 12 o'clock when everybody else is trying to have their lunch?
Saturday and Sunday.
Put it on weekends.
But I don't think we're only doing it for the brewery. I mean, there's other businesses that host
Who?
these.
Where are they? Where are all the supporters? I mean, the brewery's not even here, and we're doing it for them.
Well, I'm not doing it for anybody in
I'm
particular.
just saying, if
but-
it was that important to the brewery, somebody would be here.
You can have
Well, to be honest, there's only 2 people from the public that even really are here to speak about this. One's in favor of it because he owns
I
a
know.
food truck, and one's against it because he owns several
But
restaurants.
we're
So-
kind of tailoring it to some business that's not even represented here tonight. That doesn't, I mean, I think that's kind of,
You can have the floor, Commissioner.
I would just like to say that for this agenda item, I personally am not looking at it for any particular business. I'm looking at it as far as the businesses that do want the food truck for an event. I know Cunningham does it. I know Ace Hardware does it. I don't know of any other businesses right off the top of my head that might do it. But the way I look at it, those are brick and mortars too that are paying taxes, that are paying all those fees that have been spoken about, that want this service on their properties. So they're paying all the same fees as any other brick and mortar in this city that want a service provided to them to be able to utilize for their customer base. And we're going to say no because we think they're just a food truck and they serve no purpose in our city. I think we're looking at it the wrong way. I think we should be looking at it that other brick and mortar businesses want this, and if we don't do something for them, then we're neglecting them as well. Commissioner Daniel, I respect you 100%, so please don't take this personally. But I have to look at the big picture. I do want to come up with some compromise that's going to work as far as distance. I don't know what that is, so I need some direction from somebody over there to tell me what a good distance would be.
Well, you have to decide what it is you're trying to accomplish.
I'm trying to accomplish allowing businesses that want these food trucks on their property to enhance their business that ability.
And you can just say that it can't be located within 200 feet of the property line of a restaurant.
And that would suffice.
Which is the way it was originally written, right?
No, it said front.
Well, from the front door.
It said from front
Yeah,
door.
so now you're saying from the property line of a restaurant, a food truck cannot be within 200 feet. Not 200 feet and the remaining of that parcel, but within 200 feet of a restaurant. That would address, I believe, what Commissioner Curry is asking.
Now, we don't have any motion
Unless the
because it
restaurant
died,
owner
right?
grants permission.
No, just your amendment died.
You know, one of the things y'all think you know, you're throwing numbers around and you don't know the impact of them. And it may not be that hard to go and say, you know, table this,
Right.
get a protractor, do 200 feet around every restaurant and see how much land do you actually have left that you're really even allowing food trucks?
Right.
You don't, to my knowledge, you don't know that.
Right.
If it's been presented, it was presented last meeting when I had to leave.
And it kind of goes to Vice
So I-
Mayor's point
I
that
don't-
we're just kind of throwing out a
Then
number.
you could just see 150 feet, what does that leave in
Right.
terms of properties? You know, 200 feet from property line to the actual location of the food vendor may exclude 90% of all the property in the city.
Right,
I don't know,
right.
because they're going to have to be on a hard surface, they're going to have to be on a parking lot. You know, you could eliminate a whole bunch
Mayor,
of things.
can we have this tabled until we can get that data?
So we still have a motion on the,
I think you can
the
do
floor.
I think you can
We
do a
did.
motion to table, and that takes precedent over any
okay,
pending motion.
over,
I'll make a motion to table
To a date and time certain, which would be the next meeting.
until.
I wouldn't do the next meeting, I'd do the meeting after, because you may want to workshop this at the next meeting.
Right.
So I don't have an answer for you.
right,
If what Scott is saying, you know, that 200 feet, you have Crystal's, Little Caesars, McDonald's,
Well, let's
Gina's.
talk about Little Caesars for a second. That's not eating, is it? That's delivery
You
only?
dine in at Little Caesars, or it's takeout only? Well, they have outside tables,
What does it matter? Yeah,
so.
still an eatery.
Well, maybe a question we have, do we want?
right, do you
like a Domino's,
specify, yeah.
It's delivery only, do you want to do 200 feet from a Domino's?
Gina's, Fraz's,
Right, Mihogar,
Mihogar,
Mozzarella Fellows.
Right. I
Right.
mean, You have the.
That's only on Ridgewood.
You have the Chinese.
Terry's Place.
You have Terry's Place, you have the
Terry's.
Chinese place, there's.
There's a lot of restaurants. You
A lot of
start,
restaurants.
you do 200 feet, that's 400 feet.
Right, you might block
no
out,
feet on either
you might
side.
block out everything.
That's
Yeah.
why the adjacent property makes sense to me.
Well, maybe.
If
maybe.
any of it makes sense.
It could. I mean, it's definitely narrower, but I think we just ought to see where it goes to. And would a Dunkin' Donut be a restaurant? Yeah, I guess so.
Look, I, for one, would like to see it tabled. I mean, I know we've talked a lot about this, but I just don't see a great consensus up here. So with that being said, I'll entertain the motion for a table.
I'll make a motion to table it till our next meeting on the 25th.
Or do you want to do the meeting after, so we could maybe workshop it?
I'm not going to have an answer for you by the
Okay.
next meeting.
Till the 10th, I think, is the next meeting in March, correct?
It would be March the 10th would be your following meeting, so you can make a date certain for March the 10th if you want to have a work session on the 25th to try and iron out the differences on this. But
All right.
I think it would be important to have those businesses that it affects present.
I would like to table it until March the 10th, and hopefully we can have a workshop.
Well, schedule
By
it for
then.
6 o'clock at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Before the next meeting.
Didn't we already have a workshop scheduled?
We have another workshop. Oh, that's at the next meeting.
Yeah, but what's?
That is, isn't it?
What's
That's what
on
he's talking
that?
about.
Yeah, we have a workshop scheduled
what's that
for the
say?
air conditioning.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
that's right.
so we,
Is that a long one?
This is going to take a while.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an hour-long one? Yeah.
Could be.
Okay. All right, well, we can
So
figure out.
between now and the next meeting, if you'll come to my office and express to me what your wishes are, and we'll see if Brian and I can't get together and come up with something. But, it goes back to the conversation we had with LPGA last week, the previous meeting is, why are you doing this? Who are you trying to satisfy? What is the demand? Who is it benefiting, and who's it not benefiting? Who's
Right.
it harming?
Right.
You have to ask yourself those questions.
Right.
Well, I just gave you the answers a minute ago for mine, but I'll call you in a couple of days and have a discussion with you.
So we have a motion to table. Do we need a second for that? Can we have a second? We have a second. We don't need to open that to public, right?
No, no.
All right, any discussion needed? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I heard Commissioner Danio loud and clear, and one thing that I want us to talk about, whether we're workshopping this or not, is paragraph 3K, number of days. We're giving them 4. Let's go to 2. 2's twice what they got. I think we might be able, it's a compromise.
Yeah, it might be a compromise.
Everyone goes away a little unhappy.
Right,
Good compromise.
right.
If you're going to do that, and you're going to do 2, you might as well make it Friday and Saturday, so that we don't have to track if you did it Monday and Tuesday this week, and Thursday and Friday the next week, and just allow food trucks on Friday and Saturday.
Right. Well, let's all discuss that with you and then bring it to a workshop
Change
and
it
we can
now,
all
I'll make a
discuss it.
motion for that.
We can't do that.
Yeah, I don't.
We're
I
tabling
don't-
it. We're
Yeah, we
tabling
gotta
it.
Yeah, we're tabling it. I don't really want to make a
Yeah.
motion on that yet.
All right, so we have a table, motion to table and a second. Any other discussion? I just want to say, you did a good job, Danielle. You
And
did,
Daniel, you did, and
You did.
again, no disrespect.
right.
It's because his wife was here.
Yeah, it's because his wife was
She's
there.
texting him what to say.
A little bit of help from the audience.
Is that what that was?
All right, so let's vote on that motion to table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, table passes unanimously. And now we'll move down to communications. Mr. City Manager, Joe?
I have several items.
Uh-oh.
Got 20 minutes.
One,
Put the 5-minute clock.
5 minutes.
Yeah, would you?
One is to make you aware, last year, we had gotten permission from the commission to hire a gentleman who's working part-time in the finance department, and he's been helping us out during our period of short staffing. He's limited to the amount of hours he can work in a year because he's retired earning Social Security. So I still need him, and I need him more. We use him for 16 hours a week, and once he reaches a certain number of hours, he needs to stop because he earns too much. So I want to pay him the difference that he would lose in his Social Security to keep him working more weeks at 16 hours in order for us to maintain what were our operations in the finance department. We're short-staffed still. We're short-staffed, technically 3 full-time positions. We do have 2 temps in. One of those temps may be offered a full-time job, but we're short. So I wanted to make you aware of that, that we'll use our lap salaries to fund that position. So if anybody has an objection to that, let me know. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and proceed. Okay.
No objection. No objection, for the record.
A couple of years ago, we passed an ordinance to piggyback a contract with ProChamps, and it was for 2 reasons. One was to record foreclosed properties so that we can get them registered and know who the responsible parties are. The other was a vacant property registration, and we started that back the end of last year, like in November, around November. And as we're going through this, we're finding that there's more problems than we thought. There are more property owners that are snowbirds that have part-time homes here in Holly Hill. We have some people that own vacant properties, but they're in good conditions, and we're charging them $300 and in some cases late fees. And when they ask us, why are we paying $300 because I have a vacant property, I really don't have a good answer anymore. The answer was, well, we're trying to take care of these vacant, dilapidated properties. Well, that's not what we're finding most of these vacant properties are. We find most of these vacant properties are in good condition. So I wanted to get your position on my recommendation for us to not create a vacant property registry and to go back to ProChamps and figure out how we may be able to refund those monies that we did collect over the last 3 months, because I just don't see it making sense. Brian and I have talked about it, and now the foreclosures, that's working, and we've got a lot of foreclosed properties, and we need to identify the managers and the property owners, banks for that. But the vacant properties are just, after we've implemented, we're finding out it just doesn't make sense.
Right. This is a prime example of coming back and fixing something, but after seeing the effects of it. But I, for one, am welcome to see exactly how are we going to refund that. So if
I don't know yet. I've got to get with ProChamps because they get a piece of that action.
Right.
And I don't know how they would be willing or not willing to refund that.
Right.
So
We may have to eat it.
We gotta look at
Yeah.
the contract with them to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we have the ability to stop
Yeah,
doing that?
I heard from several of those people that had the additional home, and
Again, I'm
I
looking-
had no good answer either,
Right.
so.
Vice Mayor?
Can I make a motion to give staff direction to research what it takes to delete the vacant property program with ProChamps?
Yep.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone in the audience like to speak to that motion tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Any discussion needed?
Started it 3 months ago.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Look forward to you bringing that back to us, Joe.
And then, when I got here in 2014, there was this bus bench and bus stop ADA issue, and it's been kind of just sitting there. So I tried to address it again this week. And our bus stops are not ADA compliant. It's very difficult to make them ADA compliant. I met with Waverly Media about the bus benches to see if we can't somehow get more benches to be amenities for people waiting for a bus here in the city. I learned that, and I didn't know this till Friday, that Waverly Media actually poured 15 pads between the sidewalk and the curb. And the manager at that time, it was a good thing to do, but then the manager was given direction by this commission to remove those benches because the benches were placed in the middle of the sidewalk or on the sidewalk in order for them to take the ramp to the curb. So the commission said, take all the benches off the sidewalk. There's no other place to put the bench except on the back side of the sidewalk, and you need to get the property owner's permission to do that. A lot of property owners aren't going to give us that permission. So I was hoping by tonight I would have a recommendation on what to do. I met with Votran to get their understanding, and maybe we start a program. They're looking at ways to use inmate services to help pour the cement and frame it up and get some of these bus stops ADA compliant. We're not compliant now. Some of these bus benches are in bad spots. They're on the grass, on hills. 3rd Street by Ace Hardware is a good example of one that it's in bad shape. So I don't even have a recommendation for you right now. I'm just telling you that we're looking at it, we're working on it, and I'm not quite sure what direction we're going to go in. But it's becoming more problematic, these bus stops, and how we're going to handle them. The lawsuit's been basically, I don't want to say, is it dismissed with prejudice, so they can bring it back at some point? Without prejudice, so they can bring it back
It's
at
been a
some
couple of
point?
years,
Yeah, it's 2015 is the last communication I had on it.
5 years.
Yeah.
But it's, even though they dismiss that lawsuit, if the violation still exists, they could always bring it back. You know, there's, the dismissal with prejudice is important from a statute of limitations standpoint. Well, this is an ongoing issue, so the statute of limitations keeps rolling with it too, I would be afraid, so. It's something obviously we need to address it. because it will-
So we'll keep looking at it, and, you know, I'm still working with the county and Votran to see if there's any programs or funding where we can start to make some of the benches compliant, and just over time, maybe we'll get there. We certainly don't have a funding mechanism to do them all. So that's kind of where we're at.
But if we were sued, it would be the city, even though we don't have
It's every.
Well,
documentation
everybody
of
got
who
sued
is.
last time, and it kind of got a lot of finger pointing over who was
Right.
responsible. You know, a lot of cities did it, and so in South Daytona, what we did, we yanked every single bus stop bench out.
What did you do?
You did what?
Took them all out.
Oh,
You're gonna sue us over, you ain't gonna have one. So.
They did that in
Well,
Daytona.
We got to remember,
But-
it's not
but
the bus
it's not
bench,
the-
it's
yeah.
the bus stop.
isn't it the grade of
Yeah,
pad?
the
and-
slope and all this other stuff
So-
that gets into.
Is the city of South Daytona in compliance with all the rest of that? And
I think we pulled out all the
Pat's
bus.
shaking his head.
We just took them all out in South Daytona.
You can't get
All
any
the
bus?
city ones, so
you
anything that
have-
was a city bus stop, unless it was ADA
there's
compliant,
no stop
we
now.
pulled them out.
You have no,
No.
Votran doesn't stop in
I-
South Daytona?
Votran is actually located in South Daytona.
I know.
So,
Wow.
but our stops. So if any stop that we approved or put in, we took out, as I understand it years ago, and then, now, Votran will just go up and, you know, if you ask for a stop, they'll put a Votran sign and put it on the side of a tree, I think. And now it's a Votran stop. Well, that's not our problem. We didn't,
That's Votran's
that's
lawsuit.
Votran's issue.
Wow.
So any bus stop that we had anything that said South Daytona, any garbage dispenser that had South Daytona on it, my recollection is we yanked a whole bunch of stuff out. And that's how we became compliant. We just didn't have them. Because there's no obligation to have them.
Wow.
There's an obligation to have, if you have them, they gotta be ADA compliant.
Correct.
This community needs bus
Yeah,
stops.
I
We
agree.
need bus stops.
I agree. That's a tough problem, Joe.
Yeah, actually, I think a large number of the plaintiffs came from Holly Hill.
Really?
The one who was complaining that resulted in those benches.
He was on our bicycle protection task force.
Yeah, the person who.
It was the woman, she,
Complained
Yes.
about those benches?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think she was one of the plaintiffs.
that's right.
That must have been a long time ago.
Wow.
2013.
It was the person before Jeff Martin.
So we'll keep working on it. I don't have a recommendation yet. Lastly, you mentioned, you know, we lost Walt. You know, Walt, you know, he was a bit of a pain in the neck and had his own quirks, but the guy knew a lot of stuff. God bless him. You know, I went to 3 meetings today, and half my conversations were, well, Walt was working on that. Walt knew that. Walt was handling that. We're going to miss the guy. Over the next couple of days, well, tomorrow I'll be talking with Antoine, and we're going to figure out how we can internally, we'll do some kind of a recognition for him, whether it's a lunch, we'll get some catered food in here, something rather inexpensive, but I think it would be appropriate that we take some time and some closure. We're going to need that. But he will be missed. He really will. You know, the staff did a great job trying to help him, trying to save his life again. Antoine and Sean and Beth, Steve, it hit him. It did. So, you know, they had a hard time yesterday. They had a hard time today. It's getting a little bit easier. The afternoon, you know, But Walt had his quirks, but he was good for the city. He was good for the city.
Vice Mayor would like to add something.
I just want a question, Joe, and I'm sure the answer is yes. But I just want to make sure that all the team members involved with
Yeah.
witnessing that, I could imagine that very traumatic. It happened 2 years ago. It happened again. I want to make sure that we have counseling available, PTSD, all that kind of stuff. It's like
I checked
can't
on them
imagine.
yesterday. I checked on them this morning. I spoke to Antoine and Steve, and, help is available for them if they need it. Those of us in public safety, we've seen it before. It doesn't affect us the same way, but for
Right.
people who have not seen that on a regular basis, and they had to witness a coworker and
Right.
and had to try to save a coworker, and there's some level of guilt there. I know there's a level of guilt. You feel like you didn't do enough. I've been there. Sometimes you feel like, well, if I would have called sooner, I would have responded sooner. But the fact is, it didn't.
Right.
This was God's plan, and this was Walt's time. And he was in the building yesterday morning,
Right.
and everybody was making comments. He was in a good mood for a change for Walt. But would it have happened if he stayed in the building? If he was in my office, would it have happened? If he was walking down the hall, would it have happened? It happened at his desk, So you don't know.
Right.
This is God's plan, in my opinion, and the staff did a wonderful job trying to do what they can to save him.
And you probably already have, but I think that we should encourage all those involved. If they encourage them. If they need it, get it. It's not going to affect them any, bad way.
No.
I know that they probably already know that, but I think we just need to make that abundantly clear. Yeah.
It's a very traumatic event for a non-public safety person that's never dealt with something like this before, and to have to witness it, let alone participate in it.
Right.
It's traumatic. I know it's traumatic, and I know sometimes they'll cover it up. They'll try to say that they're okay, and they'll go home. I was up 3 o'clock this morning. I know Antoine was up 2 o'clock this morning.
Right.
He was a friend. Pain in the ass, but he was a friend. And he was hard. He knew a lot of stuff. We're going to miss him.
Yeah.
We're going to be behind, I'm telling you now, between what we're missing in finance and Nick's job is vacant and Walt's job is vacant, and we're going to fall behind on some stuff. I promise you, it's going to be tough.
You're fully staffed, right?
But we'll figure it out. We'll get through it. We'll get some closure dates on it. But everybody should just know he's going to be missed.
Yeah.
He deserves that respect.
Very well said, Mr. Forte. Is that all?
That's it.
All right. Mr. Simpson.
Okay.
All right. Val, do you have anything? Scott? All right. We'll go over here. Commissioner Danio, you're first tonight.
You said more than he said in 3 years.
Hey, we loved it.
I appreciate a commission that's got enough, whatever you want to call it, insight or at least passion or consideration to hear me out and maybe like we did, table it until we get a better understanding of the situation, and that's important to the city, and I appreciate it. I think we'll figure it out, but as far as Walt too, I'm sorry to hear about that. That's tough break, but other than that, thanks for my wife for showing up, for support, and for texting me all the right answers.
For the record, he's kidding.
That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Johnson.
I don't have a lot. I just, every time I come here and everywhere else, seem like as old as I am, I still learn things every day. But I learned a few things tonight, and one thing is too, I just know how hard it is for some business people to make it. It's you just have to have feelings for both sides, like Penny Carey was saying, whether they need the trucks or whether they don't or whatever. But that's how business works. Sometimes you're just striving to make each day and each month get by and things like that. I've been there and done it. And you have to learn every time you do it and try to make it better and learn from it and help others learn from it as well. So, and then when I was in I remember a long time ago, when I was in the military, you learned when you wake up in the morning, you don't know for sure if you're going to be here all day or not. You just have to kind of accept the fact, when you certain when you lose the people that you're working with, and I've seen it happen in that stupid ass Vietnam War that I think had no meaning. And you have to face the families of the people after they're gone. And that's what the bad part is, to fold up a flag or whatever you have to do, and you have to see the widow, the young kids is there and things like that. So the main thing is, just for sure, each day, you know you're not gonna be here forever, just know for sure where you're gonna go when you do leave here. That's the main concern I have. That's what I try to tell you. Just know for sure where you're gonna go when you do have to leave. But I think everybody here is doing a good job, and I really appreciate it. I think everybody has compassion and tries to help other people out, and I like it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Penny?
Just like to say, I couldn't be more proud of this commission. I think we're all open-minded, and there's no doubt in my mind that each one of the elected officials here and staff have a major passion for our city and only want the best for our city. And we don't always agree, and we don't always get it right. But what I appreciate about this commission is that we went backwards on a vacant property thing tonight that we tried in November, and 2.5 months later, we figured out it's not working, and we're going to fix it. And I trust we're going to get, if we don't get it right the first time, we're going to keep going and going and going until we get it as good as we can. We're not perfect, but I appreciate the fact that this commission is open-minded enough that, you know, I'm sure Commissioner Danio came in here going, oh, this is 4-1. Sometimes you're the bug and sometimes you're the windshield. I'm the bug tonight, you know. But he made his passionate argument, and we're going to fix it. So thank you, Mr. Danio. Just want to report that Commissioner Curry and I had the opportunity to travel to Tallahassee last week and lobby our legislators. And we have a great delegation. They're accessible to us. The Volusia League is going to try to take a different position, hopefully next year. At our next Board of Directors meeting, we'll make a decision on this. 2 years ago, we had individual workshops with each of our members of our legislative delegation. It was one-on-one for 1 hour uninterrupted. And when you're in Tallahassee, you're lucky to get 8 minutes of their time. And there's 5 of us in the room trying to get 8 minutes of their time, which means there's not much time. So I would encourage the public, and I would encourage our elected officials to attend those meetings, and they'll be starting this summer, traveling around Flagler over to the west side. And we actually hosted one here at Seco Hall. So just thank you for allowing me to travel on the commission's behalf. I think we made some good contacts. And Mr. Forte reminded me, was it a good meeting? Yeah, it's great. Well, you really won't know for another 60 days till we figure out what really comes out of Tallahassee. What comes out of Tallahassee isn't all the end-all be-all, because the big battle is vacation rentals. There's some scuttlebutt that no matter what they pass, the governor may veto the whole thing. So thank you for allowing me to travel on our behalf. So that's it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Penny? Or Curry? Sorry.
You too?
2 pennies. 2 pennies.
Thank you, and I also would like to thank this commission and the city for allowing me to travel. My first time to Tallahassee. It was a good experience. Things move quickly there. I know you guys said it last year, but to experience it, it moves very quickly.
It's an animal.
And it was a very nice experience. I felt we had some good meetings, but as Commissioner Penny said, you just don't know. And I would just like to give my personal condolences to Walt and his family. And he is truly going to be missed. I never really saw the grumpy side of Walt. He was always nice and happy to me.
Never saw Walt.
He was always nice and happy to me. I've never had a grumpy side. He came out a couple of times and helped me with the Christmas food packaging. And if it was too early, now he might be a little grumpy, but he wasn't bad. But he will definitely be missed.
Days that ended in a Y.
He will definitely be missed. And to the city staff, I know that it's all like family. And I'm so very sorry for the loss of not only your coworker, but your friend. And each of you have the availability to reach out and get help. And as Mr. Forte had said, because I said something to him at lunch today about this, he's keeping an eye out on you, but I really would like to encourage, especially those that were involved at the scene, to reach out and get help. That's not something that you're supposed to be involved with or see. And I'm just very sorry that you're all having to go through this. I miss Walt, and he's in a much better place, though. We should be jealous. He's in a lot better place. And one day, I hope to be there with him, and maybe he'll show me his grumpy side then. I don't know. But other than that, I appreciate this commission and the good discussion we always have, and maybe a little debate. But the one thing that we do is if we don't feel like something is right, we will stop, back up, and work on it to get it right. And that's what I appreciate about what we do. We do that really well. So thank you. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. I, too, want to carry on the sentiment about Walt. I want to, first off, start off by saying that I know we all travel a lot of places outside of Holly Hill, and people come up to us all the time and say, wow, the amount of progress that's happened in Holly Hill. You guys got it going on. What is happening there? How are you doing so well? Why is this so successful? And I think probably all of our responses is the team. We're only as good as our employees. We have the best city manager in Volusia County, and I thank God for that every day. And we have the best staff. And you are a big part of that, bringing on a lot of these people that are so competent in what they do. We have the best staff, and we rely on that. And Walt was one of those guys. I can't tell you the amount of conversations I had with him and asked him about a certain street and a certain pipe, and he knew when the date it was installed, and he knew the size of the pipe. I mean, I don't know why anybody would have that knowledge in their head, but he did, and it was important, and I knew I could always trust him. I knew that he was always telling the God's honest truth. He wasn't going to sugarcoat things, and he's going to be really well missed. And man, what a very brilliant guy that we're going to be missing. And so I want to extend our applause and thanks to Antoine and your staff, and Joe, and I know Chief, you were there as well, and our fire department for working so hard on him. And as the other commissioner said, has to be traumatic. I've never gone through an experience like that, but I hope that you'll encourage all of your people to, hey, if you need help, you say one word and you go get it, okay? And that's important. He's going to be missed. So God rest his soul. With that being said, a couple positive notes. First off, we got to stop coming here and saying quick meeting, because I think that's like the death nail when we think it's going to be quick. But in that vein, there was a lot of important conversation here tonight, probably more so than we should have, because we should maybe workshop these types of issues more. But when things come up at the last minute, and I came here as a yes vote, and you put the brakes on for me. So I want to applaud you on your performance tonight. Honestly, I've never seen you that passionate about something, so I applaud you.
Just do it at first reading next time.
Yeah, do it at first reading.
Could you show up at first meeting and give him the words to say?
So, and on that specific issue, look, you made a great point of, hey, this is an accessory to the businesses, and they're paying all these taxes. You made a great point that, hey, look, we got to support these guys. And so we're in the middle trying to weigh this out in the scale. I couldn't figure out which way it was tipping tonight, and I've never felt that way up here, to be honest with you. So I appreciate that discussion that we all had, and I'm glad that we could take a little time on it, because it's not that time sensitive. The other thing I want to say is, man, that was super cool having the Cub Scouts here. I don't
Yeah.
think that's ever happened. They're going to become Boy Scouts, and I appreciate you all participating in that. I thought it was a great honor for us to do that, so that was really neat. The other thing I wanted to bring up really quickly is the gymnastics center on Nova in the north part of our city.
I don't think anybody could have missed it.
You're right, it's going up. You know it. You have a building right next to it. And Joe, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about this, but I wanted to make sure that the commission all knew we were dealing with the billboard issue that needed to be moved for that project, and we went ahead as a commission and allowed for that to happen. And unfortunately, DOT came in and unfortunately overruled us and said that they're sticking to their guns on their 1,000 feet limit.
1,000-foot separation.
1,000-foot separation of billboards, which is ludicrous because the billboards are already right next to each other, and we were actually lessening the problem. But apparently from Mr. Forte, there's no way around that. And so hopefully the gymnastics center will be able to figure something out. And the reason is because it was so important for that billboard, because that was going to be, the revenue from that billboard was going to go into scholarships for kids here in Holly Hill who need it, I would argue, more than other places. And you have many, many families out there, a single mother raising 2 kids and working 2 or 3 jobs sometimes, and can't afford to put them in gymnastics. And then what happens? Then they're out on the street. And then that just spirals out of control. It really can. And so I'm very, very upset about it. I hope that there is some type of solution. But wanted to make sure that the whole commission knew about that. Vice Mayor?
I talked to the engineer today.
Yeah.
They're just going to lose a couple parking spaces, and they're going to work around it.
Is that what they're going to
Redesign
do?
the driveway, yeah.
Really? Good, good.
It's going to stay there.
I didn't know that. That's great news then. Should have told me that before I went on an impassioned speech.
He was sitting at the table with you, the engineer.
Yeah, I saw him today. I didn't talk to him about it, though. But with that, is there any other further business? Yes,
Sorry.
Vice Mayor.
You talked about Joe being the best city manager in Volusia County. Well, we could widen that a little bit, but, you know, I'm sure the commission all got the email today, but through his leadership and hard work, our Pictona across the street is ranked #1 for ECHO funding.
I saw that.
Big deal.
$400,000 grant to this city, largely in part for Joe Forte.
And staff. So thank you very much.
Excellent job.
Glad you remember that. Thank you.
Catch.
Is there any further business? With that, we are adjourned.